one of the issues that hasn't been talked about a lot is the tariffs, and the tariffs that have been proposed by Donald Trump if he becomes president of the United States again, and how those tariffs specifically have impacted our farmers. Mr. Stokes, are you aware of the impact that the tariffs that were imposed during the previous Trump administration, how that impacted our farmers?
Well, I think broadly speaking, the tariffs on the one hand are meant to be a tool to combat unfair trade practices by China, but on the other hand, they impose costs on consumers in the United States. So in many ways, we've got to kind of strike a balance because we haven't been able to deal with unfair trade practices from China effectively, and this has been one of our most effective tools, but it does come at a cost for middle-class people, and so we've got to strike a balance there, that's in general how I would approach the tariff issue.
That's absolutely right. And more specifically, when we went through this before, because doing the same thing over and over is the definition of insanity if we're expecting a different result. Farmers who exported soybeans, cotton, and sorghum to China were hit by Beijing's decision to raise tariffs on those products as much as 25%. Even despite Trump's attempt to mitigate his colossal failure by providing offsets and financial support for farmers, giving $23 billion in 2018 and 2019, he failed to distribute the support evenly to farmers, to say nothing that the support only partially mitigated the harm caused by these tariffs. And what is being proposed now is Trump is proposing a worldwide tariff of 10% and 60% on Chinese goods, which would lower the average after-tax incomes of U.S. households in 2025 by $1,800 and reduce imports to the U.S. by $5.5 trillion or 15%. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach to this. Interestingly enough, I will say that our position on China should be one of bipartisanship. I will absolutely say that, and we don't find very much bipartisanship specifically in this committee. I think some of the concerns that I have, though, is just about the fact that we are not speaking more holistically. Let me explain to you kind of what I mean by that. One of the things that has been brought up has been fentanyl, and I appreciate the conversation around fentanyl because for so long in this committee, it has been put out there to the American people that fentanyl is only coming from the southern border, and the only reason we have a crisis is because of the southern border, when the reality is that China is playing a huge role as it relates to the fentanyl crisis. And so we've got to approach any of these crises more holistically. And the reason that I have a problem with this particular hearing, like some of my colleagues have already stated, is that we're not really talking about the bigger picture. The bigger picture is that it's not China as an isolated bad actor. What is really making and exacerbating this issue is the fact that China is teaming up with Russia, who is also teaming up with Iran. Is there anyone that disagrees that these three have actually started to work in concert together, and it's all for the harm of us? By your silence, I will say that you agree with me. And so I think that we need to be honest with the American people and talk about the dynamic of this threat, and that it is a lot larger, and that's actually what makes it even scarier. And it is why we do need someone that will lead this nation and will not just call out one bad actor, but call them all out, because they are definitely working together. As it's already been pointed out, not being able to say that we want Ukraine to defeat Russia, it's a very simple thing, but it means a lot. In addition to that, there is one portion of this world that I've traveled to most since I've been in Congress, and that is the Indo-Pacific area. And to go into places like Taiwan and to listen to what people in Taiwan, what people in Thailand, what people in Indonesia, what they are all experiencing as it relates to the CCP, it hurts my heart. And so I do want to come up with solutions, because a lot of times when I'm listening to this, I'm wondering if they are talking about mobsters or what, because that's how bad it sounds when they're dropping off these bags of money And then the next thing you know, it's like they own these people, yet we know that there's a lack of security, and we have to do our part in America to make sure that we are helping out these modern day democracies. But also we've got to be smart about our policies, right? Like our trade policies have to be smart and they have to keep up, and we also have to make sure that we're protecting those here in our country, whether we're talking about from military attacks, or whether we're talking about interfering with our elections, or whether we're talking about literally our economy. And China somehow has their hand in all three of these spaces. The thing is, I want us to come up with policies, and I'm charging and requesting each of you, as you sit here and you have studied this, to talk about this in a very holistic mindset and give us some actual proposals that you believe would be bipartisan, where we can definitely deal with not just China, but Iran as well as Russia, as they are working as a collective to harm us. Thank you so much for your time, and I'll yield.